5 years. And if you are young in your career and you're starting out, or you've been in your career for the last few years and you're thinking about, well, what is next? There are just so many opportunities. And when I look at the risk profession and how it's evolved so much, well, within the last 10 years of me being CEO at IRMSA, and where we're at the moment, and I must tell you is that I've seen this evolution of risk management in a couple of years. It just keeps changing, this profession. I'm not sure if any of you know, but last year with lockdown, one of our major concerns was that we would see a major drop in membership. And what we've actually seen, particularly with the corporate membership, where organizations become a full member of the institute, not just the individual, but our corporate members grew last year to a level that we've never had before as a corporate membership. And so it speaks so much to this profession of risk, not just for the risk professional and that risk practitioner, but in terms of how risk is positioned in an organization and how everyone is sitting up, and these leaders, our executives, are sitting up and saying, we need to ensure that risk management is embedded within our organization throughout, from top to bottom, bottom to top, throughout. And I think so we need to grab these opportunities, and we and you need to run with it, because now is the time. So before I hand over to our chairperson, Eleni, of our Young Professionals Committee, there are a couple of things I need you to consider from an IRMSA point of view. How do we support you? So I was thrilled to see this morning that we've got so many of our delegates today, and sure, we've got a lot of people. Roxanne was sharing this morning, I think it's about 180 people that will be joining us, which is brilliant. It's such a good start to the year for this event. And so I was looking at the list to see, who are members, who are student members. So I need you to think about this membership and how we as an institute, as the professional body for risk management in South Africa, how we can support you. So with your membership, what are the tools that you need? And you need to keep communicating with us and telling us what you need. But currently, with what we've got, are you using the technical library? Are you using your membership to access that wealth of knowledge that is in there? I'm pleased to see when we have so many people attending these webinars, because these are free events that you can come in, learn. You need to benchmark, network, try and make contact. It's a little bit more tricky now that we're online, because we're not sitting at a table or having a coffee with someone, but find a way still to do that. Make contact, use the chat box on the side, find ways to connect with people during, after, still ensure that you are networking and benchmarking so that you can grow. That's how we do it. And then, of course, what are you going to do next? So now you're into your risk management career, you're getting into it. Your next step up, if you haven't started that journey already, should be your first board exam to become a certified risk management practitioner. And that will be, you want to be able to have that designation against your name. And then, of course, then you start building and growing towards the CRM Prof, which is board exam 2. But for now, that CRM Prac is vital. And of course, the professionalization team is so available to chat and share with you in terms of what the criteria is to write that board exam and what you need to do. And then, of course, there's that work experience logbook that you need to complete. And how do you do that in terms of what you're currently doing in your landscape? So what is the journey for you? And then as we go along, are you upskilling? Are you really sure that you are equipped the whole time to be able to maneuver and work? We do have our e-learning, we have our online learning. And so you need to maybe have a look and see, what programs we've got available that are going to really support you. So I'm going to leave you with that. And I want you to think more about your membership that you've got with IRMSA and how do you use it, that you really ensure that you are empowering yourself. And what is that? And don't forget, even in today, we've got some very senior people that are sitting in because they want to support our youth initiatives, because we realize how important you are in terms of building this amazing country that we've got. And so tap into them, tap into the senior people that are present, that are available, that want to connect with you. And so I need you to think about those things. So what I'm going to do now, Eleni, if I can ask to hand over to you, and I'm going to wish you all well today, and to our speakers today. Sure, you really are being treated. We've got Brett Williams, who was our risk manager, up and coming risk manager of the year last year. We've got Asha Patel, she was the runner-up for that category as well with our awards. And then Philip Tillman, who's one of the first people I met at the Institute, who is maybe the most innovative person I've ever met and thinks so differently, and is a wonderful person to have within your stable, within your networking and so on, and just to hear how he thinks about what's next for you and what's next for all of us. Really great. So Eleni, I'm going to hand over to you, and thank you. Looking forward to a wonderful, wonderful morning. Thank you.
Great. All right, cameras on, ready to roll. Jill, thank you very much. Always give such a lovely and warm welcome. And I really do like a couple of questions you posed there at the end, and actually like everybody on this call, particularly the students and the student members, to reflect on that. How is it that we as IRMSA can support you, and what are you going to do next? What is your next? So hoping that through today's presentation that it'll help trigger some thoughts and fire off some ideas in terms of what your next is and what IRMSA's role is in that next. But all right, to formally start, a very good morning to you all. My name is Eleni Albanis. I'm the chairperson of IRMSA's Student Forum Committee. So from myself and the committee itself, it is our greatest pleasure to welcome each of you to today's Young Professionals webinar. As Jill mentioned, we're expecting a great number of, I think, 180 of you plus. I see you all still trickling in, so hopefully by the time break starts, we'll have a full house. And also, we do promise that we'll make this early morning start worth your while. Just you wait and see. Let me start by saying that IRMSA's annual risk report is a commodity worth more than gold. For those of you who have not read it, please do yourselves a favor and read it. Amongst all the nuggets of gold, I'd like to specifically start with a note from IRMSA's president, Tabile Nyaba, where she so beautifully opened with a line that has stuck with me since reading it. She had said, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." As students and young professionals, these words couldn't be more appropriate. Further to Tabile's note, she advises that 2020 demonstrated our new reality of persistent and disruptive volatility. She then tactfully and truthfully proceeded to state that there is no reason to think that the volatility will decrease, that in fact it is only likely to increase. If we take a moment to reflect on that, the importance and the need for effective risk management practices could not have been echoed any louder than from the events of 2020. The global pandemic has simply served as a stark reminder of the uncertainties of the future. These uncertainties are presented in two ways: mismanaged or unidentified risks, and opportunities that can be leveraged to enhance value. For today, though, we'll not only be looking back, but we'll be integrating some of these lessons while looking ahead to forge the way forward. Our topic for today's webinar, as Jill already introduced, is Building the Future Young Professionals in 2021. This is a thrilling topic to unpack with so many different vantage points that could probably take 10 of these sessions, and it will still only just put a dent into what there is to say on this. However, I do believe that we've selected 3 of the most appropriate speakers that possess the experience, accolades, and wisdom to shed light on this topic for you. I'll introduce each of them in more detail as we move along our agenda, but I'd briefly like to welcome and thank our speakers, Brett, Asha, and Philip, in advance. But before we delve into their juicy presentations, I'd like to give those of you who don't know about the Student Forum Committee a little bit of insight and background. Excuse me. In order for IRMSA to serve the full risk fraternity, the Student Forum was created to cater for those in the world in between, the world before you start or are established in your career. This space can sometimes be daunting, and our objective as a Student Forum is to help guide, support, and inform you as you grow into the risk professionals you are destined to be. The committee specifically caters to students up to the age of 26 who are currently enrolled in a certificate, degree, diploma on a full or a part-time basis. And the best part is that the student membership carries no fees and has a great deal of benefits. So on behalf of the committee, I'd like to say thank you, and we look forward to engaging with all of you, the new and existing members. We'll share a link for the registration in the chat box at the end of today's talk. So in the meantime, to today's wonderful audience, please sit back and eagerly take in all the wonderful insights and wisdom that is about to be shared with you this morning. I welcome you I welcome you to participate with thoughts, comments, and questions in the chat box, and we'll address these questions and answers in our Q&A slot at the end of today's session. But in the meantime, we will start with Brett Williams. I see that you've already got your video on, so that's great. Brett Williams, the Youth Exco and Regulatory person at Vodacom, Business Risk Manager as well. Risk Manager comes as second nature to him, a skill that he developed over his time in Vodacom Group. His intimate and practical knowledge of risk management sphere has helped to tackle potential issues that were hurdles for projects. His ability to define the problem, investigate the root cause, prioritize the issues, and facilitate the solution has seen his portfolio expand rapidly over the years, as with his involvement across African subsidiaries. Brett was awarded IRMSA Up and Coming Risk Manager of the Year in 2020. So a warm welcome to you, Brett, and we look forward to your presentation today.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for the introduction. I just want to start off by saying thank you to IRMSA. Firstly, just for the platform, and secondly, for the opportunity for myself. I think the importance
of the nomination committee being mentioned in the case. What was
a little bit of feedback? Does anyone have their mic on? Sorry, back to that. So thank you very much to IRMSA for the platform, not just as a part of a risk manager, but also as my secondary role, which is as part of the youth council here at Vodacom, and specifically looking after legal and regulatory. It's really good to see that, you know, we all looking at what the future of risk management, the future of all the work and the new workforce and the change in the workforce that's happening. So thank you very much for that. So as part of like the owners that IRMSA reached out, they asked, you know, very much that I please speak about my personal development journey, as well as the CRM prac experience. I did, however, take the liberty to include 2 other small topics, which I thought had to have been shared in this time. I think it was too valuable to not share that. So that being taking ownership and how important I believe that to be, and secondly being building your future and the tangible tools I've personally learned in the last 5 years, and hopefully will help you in doing the same going forward. So I guess to say, I hope I stick to time. If I don't, guys, so please just reach out and stop me. If I happen to finish a little earlier, then you know, happy to address those customer complaints. You know, I know there's always a lot, and you know, it's customer centric as part of our diligence at Vodacom. So happy to do that. Okay, and so just to confirm, can you guys all see my screen?
Yes, we can, Brett. Thank you.
Okay.
sure we can?
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, the first part being personal development. Okay, so I mean, maybe just to give a bit of context to myself, who I am and what's happened over the last few years and where I've got. So in 2015, I finished my BCom honors in financial management sciences at UP. You know, the course was my first introduction to qualitative risk management. Previously, I had studied investment risk management, so it was, you know, it was all about the quantitative side and making sure that value spoke up, and you know, and this was my first exposure to qualitative. It was very brief in the fact that it only summed up about 2 of the 5 modules that I participated in, and you know, when I went out into the world of work and started looking, you know, risk management wasn't the first thing that came to mind. It's something I knew, but not something that I knew was a profession. Lucky for me, in 2016, when I applied to the graduate program, one of the roles that they offered me to interview for was within the business risk management team. And, you know, as I want to say that I was lucky in the fact that risk management in this instant very much chose me. So I was, I was pulled in by Renisha and Michael Jeffries at the time as a little young graduate that, just seemed eager enough to learn. And funny enough, that's the reason they gave me for hiring me, not because I had studied the right things or, because I dressed the right way. It's just, in that interview, they said you showed the willingness to learn. And, it's not something that I thought I was putting out, but, glad I did, because it really has been just an amazing time thus far. And yeah, I've been here at Vodacom for the last 5 years in various roles, different portfolios over the time, but it has been amazing. And in 2017, so about a year into the program, or a year and a half into the program, I wanted to highlight the fact that the team got involved in an initiative called the Vodacom Hackathon. When we did, this was off the bat because I heard about, the release of the first ever Vodacom Hackathon, and I thought how cool to be involved in something like this. So I reached out to Mike and I was like, Mike, I really want to do this. And he said, it's fine, you can do it, but you have to include the team. Because, there is no stronger team in the company than the one you work with every day. And, let's use this opportunity to show our success as a team, but also just as a business risk management function, right? We seen as a support function, but we so much more, right? We have that wide view of the organization. We have all these things that we talk about. Let's use it. Let's see where we benchmark against anyone. And so the team took on the challenge. It was amazing. I mean, the whole experience end to end, 2 days, sleepless nights, working throughout the clock, learning how to put together new sort of presentations, videos overnight. I mean, the team really did pull together, and it was absolutely amazing experience. And I mean, one of the things that I learned there was very much just that success as a team is far more rewarding than as an individual. And especially when you look back at what you achieved, you know that you couldn't have done it on your own. Right. In 2018, so about 2 years into the graduate program, came to an end, and I got made a specialist within business risk management. And then, lucky for me, just a few months later, a new position opened up as a senior specialist, and I was able to get that position. So from a personal perspective, that was just very much, a goal in my book, and one I chose to celebrate, and really just felt like a culmination of the correct attitude over the previous 2 years. And I'll speak hopefully a bit more about, the attitude part later. I do think it's extremely important, and very much the leader in a lot of things that we do, and determining our future. Post 2018, so it was 2019, and 2019 this new exciting forum started called the Youth Executive Council. So I mean, Vodacom was very much shaping what that looked like. We had a white paper from Deloitte. We were looking at what that would look like, and when the initiative kicked off and when it opened up, it was very much in the air about who we were going to be and who was going to be involved. I say I wasn't yet a part of it. But through the selection process, I was lucky enough to be selected by our Chief of Legal and Regulatory in Kanteko. And he selected me to obviously lead and represent on his behalf, which is, an amazing opportunity, one, but also a huge burden. Here I am with just 3.5 years work experience, being asked, to be the extension arm in a very important forum of a senior leader who's, been at this level for over 20 years and served in multiple strong institutions, including our governing bodies. How the hell was I going to represent such an amazing person? And I guess the answer being one step at a time, and with a lot of help from him. The most important part of the last year and a half that we've shared, that I've taken from him, is one small line that he said to me, that I have on the right there. And he said, Brett, out of everything I'll teach you, I'll tell you one thing, that leadership depends on logical thinking and simply being nice to those around you. And I felt that was so simple. It was so simple that it almost started being, profound to me. But he really just feels that it's logical implementation and analysis of the situation, and just really being a nice person, because what could get you further than just that. So I just thought that was absolutely amazing. You know, there was no complicated definition. There was no further explanation needed. You know, he just asked me, you know, when you're out there representing me, those two things, be logical and be nice to people, and we will go a long way. And it's been a really awesome journey since then. In 2020, last year was lockdown. I think that's most likely what I should have highlighted. And, you know, like many other people, I chose to complete the CRM prac in that year. I actually did want to complete it the year before, but I needed to wait a bit and get approval because I didn't have the correct work experience or the enough work experience. Thank you very much to IRMSA for reaching out and catering for my circumstance. So to all of you out there who want to write it and want to get on the journey sooner rather than later, you know, don't reach out to IRMSA if there's any help you need. You know, they are accommodating, very nice. Helped me make sure I got the opportunity to sit and write the board exam, and I will cover that in a little bit more detail because I do think it's extremely important, and I do think it's not just another certification to tick off, or you know, it really is. There's a building block that you need, and it's one of those you only realize how important it is once you've been a part of the process. So I do think it's something you should look at. And then maybe just me today. So what I am involved in now is I have started my master's in digital business at FITS, and this really is me trying to figure out what my diversity factor is to the organization and to the department. You know, what I can bring, and more importantly, you know, the importance of being involved in this digital era. I think if we look at how fast the 4IR has come upon us and the rate of change, I mean, it hasn't even been 40 years. We can understand the importance of us being involved right now, you know, as soon as possible. And, you know, we don't know how long it will be until the next one, but considering the previous calculations and expectations, we know we're going to move through this extremely quickly. So, you know, I think it's important that we all get on the train now. Okay, so to maybe just start off this little session, and forgive me if I stray a bit, I can't see my notes at the bottom, but I kind of do remember what I put down. So I want to speak a little bit about the importance of attitude, and it's something that I personally, you know, have had to cultivate for a very long time, and you know, I've had to hear people reiterate it to me, and I think it's depicted a lot by the slide I have up front. And I know our brains have us rushing through the slides already, and you've probably already read through it once. I'd like to indulge that, and please just read through it one more time. If you're one of those people who really wants to cement it and wants to put in your calculator, please do so. I had to. Lucky I did find out that the source I used, you know, had a rounding error. So it's good to double check things and to make sure, you know, your information is correct. But the importance of attitude cannot be understated. I think in especially for us as young professionals moving into, you know, a space where we essentially know the least when walking into the working world, your attitude to learn, to want to do more, to want to take in, you know, to want to be a part of something great is the most essential part to who you are going to be, to how much you are going to learn in everything that you do, right? And no matter how small you believe the value is, no matter how insignificant you believe it is, it will make a difference. And if we see option A on the left, it's easy to join the working world, to get a permanent job, and to just sort of sit into the process, you know, and go with the flow, as to speak. And I mean, you know, doing nothing at all other than just, you know, being a part of the flow doesn't change much. You know, 365 days later, at the end of the year, you know, not much has changed. In fact, nothing's changed, right? But option B, we have the option to just make small, consistent efforts every single day, right? Every single day. And I mean, this is extremely important, right? That, you know, regardless of what that change is, or what that opportunity is, that every single day we will make an effort, but we'll have the correct attitude, right? The attitude to make the effort, to make the change. And 365 days later, I think, you know, it's the effort or the result is quite significant. And it sort of leads very nicely into the second part, because I do want to talk about the fact that when we look at career progression or personal development within our own space, we're constantly uncertain about what is happening around us, and what's happening in our lives, if we're doing the correct thing, if we're on the correct path, if this decision was the correct decision. And that's okay. That's normal. I'd like to believe that every single one of us at some point until now has had that time, and that is potentially going to have that time in the future where we are just completely uncertain about what is happening. But if we have the correct attitude and we persevere, we will come out 37.8 and not 1, right? We will make a difference if we have the correct attitudes and we persevere through those times. Okay, and so into that. This section is going to be very quick and very close story to myself, but I felt it was really cool. I had a speaker within Vodacom speak, and when I shared something with her, she said, "That's a really amazing story to share. I think that's the one you should." I hope I depicted correctly. So I just want to move into, so the second theme is experience life, and very, very important to me, and what has shaped me into the person I am today. And I mean, it's not a story about being, coming from an underprivileged background and making something of myself and, hoping that I've achieved so much. And it's actually very much the opposite. It's actually a story about a young boy who left Zimbabwe, who had the opportunity to go to varsity in South Africa. And funny as it may sound, for a Zimbabwean, that's as good as a South African going to Australia. We made it across the border. I'm completing varsity. I mean, life was good. Life was amazing. I went to Res, where there was 26 people from my school, or from my city, out of the 75 boys that started out there. So I mean, I went with all my friends. My parents were just amazing rocks in terms of emotional support. Financially, they were making sure that this was going to happen. So I didn't need to worry about that. All I needed to worry about was being at varsity and giving my all. I mean, on top of that, 2 weeks into varsity, I found a girlfriend, amazing lady. I was like, whoa, this is amazing, this next level. I mean, to the level that Alex Ferguson was still the manager at United. That's how good life was, like what really could be wrong with this experience? Everything was right. I really had the opportunity to change my narrative, right? And to make something, and to be, to be someone special. And everything was going my way. I even came off a gap year, so I mean, I was well rested, no case of burnout. I'd been doing whatever I liked for a year, and this was my opportunity to focus and get everything I wanted for life. It was also, the beginning of the journey that would make me, an overnight sensation and an instant millionaire. Don't worry, I did come back down to earth about 3 weeks into varsity. But this was everything I'd ever wanted, right? And it was mine for the taking. And what happened is that, at the end of first year, I looked back, and everything I mentioned to you was still great. Life was amazing. But what wasn't amazing was my academics, because I spent so much time enjoying this phase of life and everything that was going around, that I didn't pay attention to the most important part, right? I lost focus. And at that part, I failed accounting twice, including the rewrite that was offered to me by the varsity. Failing again would mean academic exclusion, but more so it meant immediately that an extra year of varsity was added to the length of my degree, which was absolutely the worst thing for a first year, and for myself, who wanted to make millions as soon as I left varsity. And it was, yeah, I was in an absolute state. I couldn't understand what happened. I was at the phase where everything else was against me, right? The fact that I didn't do accounting at school was against me. The fact that we're not really forced to go to lectures or to complete homework. How was I really supposed to understand what was happening, right? But everything that was going wrong wasn't me. It was everything else. To the point where that holiday I went home, and as I was involved in a provincial hockey tournament, and one of my coaches was talking to me at halftime, and he just said, Brett, you know the difference between a good player and a great player in any sport. And I was like, no, what's happening? He said, a good player will make a mistake and pause, right? A great player will make a mistake, and his first two movements post making a mistake is to recover from the mistake. And he said, you used to be a great player. Now you're just a good player. What happened? And that one hit a real sore spot, right? I mean, this had been my coach for a good part of 18 years. He had taken me all the way provincial and national. I thought, like he had my back. But he asked me, why is everyone else the problem? Why aren't you the problem? Everyone makes mistakes. How you recover from them is the most important part. So, from that time, I mean, I took that obviously not to the second half of the game, but really to the rest of life and what was happening around me, is that everything that went wrong was my fault, right? But that was awesome, because that meant that was within my realm to change and to make different. And whatever small element in the future that wasn't under my control, so be it. It wasn't under my control, but there was a large portion under my control that I could change and I could make the difference. So my ask to you today, as part of this theme, is to, one, experience life, but two, be a great player and make sure that your first moves post any mistake is to recover, right? No one can stop you from making mistakes. Mistakes are natural, they're part of life. But how you recover and how you respond, the attitude you respond with, is going to be what sets you apart from the person next to you, right? Do you drop and sink your head, or do you march on and figure out what you can do better and what you can change? And then lastly, the third theme I want to speak about is building your future. So, I've been to, as part of the WICO, we've set up a number of talks from leaders across the business to come share with the youth, both in the larger forums and within the smaller forums. And it's really been great. We've received a lot of amazing nuggets. I mean, there's people out there who have achieved a lot, who have done a lot, and hearing their stories completely changes you. But the one thing I always feel is missing is the tangible, the take home, right? The tangible element to it, outside of just shaping your thinking. And I want to leave those three things with you. And in just the 5 years I've been working, I have come across the three most important things, or relationships, and these being meaningful relationships, right? So, I mean, within the time here, I have been lucky enough to have all three. Generally never all at one go, and that was a mistake on my behalf. But I want to reach out to you now and say, these are the three things you need. So two of them you've heard of. So mentorship being number one. Everyone's heard about finding a mentor when you get to business. And, the first thing everyone does is look up and go, who's my mentor? And they look at the CEO, or the CFO, or the CRO, and they go, I want him. I want him to be my mentor. And that is lovely. And that is great. Let me share with you that CROs generally have about 4 mentees already, and they are mentoring people who are generally part of the succession planning, and generally a part of delivering at a very strategic level. They are also one of the most busiest people on the planet. So getting time with them is the hardest thing. So my suggestion to you is look for a mentor who is going to be truly invested in you, right? Who is going to be truly invested in spending time with you and developing you. So it doesn't always have to be the CRO. There's plenty other risk managers along the path and risk executives who can help you. Look for them. They are amazing people, and they will be there for you. Coaching, I mean, granted, we are entering a space where we come with this immense academic knowledge. How do we shift that to being practical and on the ground? So you should never not have a coach. There's always something we don't know from an operational perspective within our business unit and without our business unit. And it's, you know, you should also move to being a coach for stuff that you have learned. It really does cement the understandings. But thirdly, and most importantly, is find a sponsor, right? And a sponsor is very different from the previous two. A sponsor is someone who has seen your skill sets, who values your skill sets, and decides that when you're not in the room, they will shout your name for you, right? They will push you forward. And I'm talking about someone who is going to stand up and say, I believe in this person, I've seen their work, and I will put them forward. And in that, saying that, I want to leave you with one liner that my best friend and I always used to say at Varsity. It's not about who you know, but rather who knows you. So go out there and make an impression for the right reason, and make a lasting impression, right? And get those sponsors. That is extremely important. Then maybe just to close off, I want to speak about the CRM prac board exam. So guys, I only just recently completed mine in June of last year. It was very nerve-wracking considering it had been about 5 years since I completed my last exam. But I do want to say these 4 things, is that firstly, the content is end-to-end. I do believe that whatever forum you are in, you will be able to be a valuable contributor. That the range of the knowledge will leave you empowered to be a part of any conversation. It is a lot of content, but the positive part being that you will have what you need to be a strong risk management professional. And one of my colleagues that I worked at NEA has been in risk management for about 20 years and completed multiple courses. And when she looked at the content, she said, Brett, I advise you to do this. If you do this, you potentially will not need to follow another risk management route if you can take this all the way to the end. So I'm only in step 1. I know there's a lot more steps ahead of me, and I'll continue with that, but I urge you to start, right? And I just want to let you know that when you're looking at the copious amounts of information that comes, don't worry, it's practical. The more you read, the more you realize the gaps in the industry within your home function, within the way you conduct risk management as a professional. So work your way through it, do as best as you can. It will shape your thinking, which is extremely important. And you'll notice that every day post your session will be focused on what you learned the previous day. So work at it, do your best. It is challenging, and like everything else, it does require some hard yards. So start preparing as soon as possible, but don't stop at the exam. There is a logbook that takes just as much time, if not longer. So good luck with that, and good luck with your preparation. And just like every other piece of development you've ever done till this point and going forward, guys, there's only as much value as you decide to take out. So in closing, I just want to say that once again, as per Brett and his bestie, it's not who knows you, not who you know rather, but who knows you. And that sentiment's important. I know the CEO, I know Jay-Z, none of them have helped me out, but who has helped me are people who know me. My CRO knows me and he's helped me out. And the difference really lies there. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope I shared something worthwhile to someone. And yeah, so if there's no questions, I'll be helping out with those customer issues now.
Brett, thank you. That was wonderful. I was all locked in from start to end. You had a really great story to share, and the way that you shared it was very enticing. So thank you for sharing your personal journey with us. I actually jotted down a whole bunch of different key takeouts that I actually want to share in the chat for those that want to refer back. But my favorite part was definitely one of your opening lines there, that your eagerness to learn was actually what sets you apart from the rest. And I think that's something that a lot of us take for granted. Yes, what we study counts for something. You had said it didn't matter how you dressed. To a certain degree, it counts for something, but nothing trumps your eagerness to learn. I think that will always set someone apart. Technical skills is something that you can always learn, but an attitude is something that comes from within, and I think people hire people that are willing to learn and grow with an organization. So I'm glad that they spotted that in you, and it makes great sense that you were selected as the up-and-coming risk manager of the year in 2020. There were two other points that I want to highlight. You had mentioned that you decided to start your master's, and that was part of your journey to identify what your diversity factor is. And I love that. What is it that you've got to offer an organization? And that kind of also leads into the CRM prac board exam. I think that's probably where your diversity factor journey started, was going to deciding to study last year and write your board exam. You had mentioned that the board exam itself helped shape your thinking. I know it got me all excited. It's something that it's on the cards for me. So both my hands are up, and that exam is up and coming for me. So my question is to the audience, after Brett's presentation, what he's had to share, has he inspired you to consider and write the CRM prac board exam? I think we'll probably put a little poll up on the side and see who is interested. And for those that do respond and click on the poll in the comment section, we'll just be sure to send you some more information there. I see that we don't have any specific questions at the moment, but perhaps through the chat, if anything does come up that feeds into your presentation, Brett, I'll be sure to raise those with you. But in closing, I just want to say that I loved how you identified those three meaningful relationships. In my mind, I've always just seen the mentorship and coaching, but it's so wonderful how you positioned and explained the sponsorship. And I think that is such a wonderful addition to what the meaningful relationships are that exist. So thank you for shedding light on your journey and your key takeaways. I'm sure that was fruitful for everybody on this call. So yes, thanks, Brett. Let me now, just before we proceed, if anybody does have a quick question, if a hand goes up, I'm happy to take a question for Brett. Otherwise, we'll proceed to our next speaker. All right, doesn't seem like there is any other questions. Let me scroll here to Miss Asha Patel. I hope that you are ready for us now. It is your slot up and coming. To everybody on the call, Asha assists with establishing and maintaining the principal risk profile for the Discovery Group and ensures that there are no gaps in management of specific risks and risk categories. She was awarded the IRMSA runner-up for up-and-coming risk manager of the year in 2020. On behalf of everybody on this call, Asha, we look forward to hearing all the insights you have to share with us today. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm really happy to be here. And sorry, just one correction. I'm actually the risk manager for Discovery Vitality, which is a subsidiary of the Discovery Group as a whole. I'm sure some of you might have, a Vitality product where you get your fitness goals and stuff. So I think, like Brett, if you have any complaints, I'm happy to take them later. So I think firstly for me, I'd like to actually, thank IRMSA for asking me to speak. It's actually, something for me to get out of my comfort zone. When I first got, the request, I was like, oh my gosh, speaking to a whole forum of people is, something I've never done. I present at, meetings and excos, and I know everybody, but public speaking or, to people you don't know is something very new to me. So I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to get out of my comfort zone. Okay, so before I start and present my slides, I just would like you to know that I'm not good at PowerPoint, right? So Brett, I really loved your presentation, and that's my disclaimer, right? Just a second. I'm just gonna print. Okay. Sorry. Right. So honestly, like I said, my PowerPoint skills are very limited, and no offense, Brett, but I thought like, I could just put the agenda, but what do I really want to speak about? And the thing to me is that what I'm going to speak about is me. And in the same way, I have my own story. Everybody has their own story. I think in a career in risk management or anything for that matter, it's about you and how you take your career and make it your own, how you own it. And yeah, so that's why the title for me is This Is Me. The three aspects that I'd like to talk to you guys about is on a professional development side, on how did I get to where I am. The second one is, what does a risk manager role mean to me personally, based on my experience in business? And the last one is, it's the other stuff. So to me, these are the things that, sometimes you may not theoretically learn, but to me, it's skills that you really should have, you should focus on. Sometimes you may never come across it in the textbook. Sometimes your manager may never, mention this to you. But to me, these are very crucial and important skills that I think, Julian and Brett themselves have touched on as well. Okay, so I'm going to start with professional development. So, let me start, right? I started my, my journey through, how do I say? So my career path by starting off as studying a speech and hearing therapy course at WITS. Yeah, so that's, as you can tell, is very, very worlds apart from where I am now. The thing was that, look, to be very honest, I had an aunt and she was a psychologist, and my parents were not very clued up in terms of advice or getting me the right advice as a, in high school. And the other thing is, we had guidance counselors back then, and they weren't really equipped to guide you in terms of your personal development, in terms of what skills do you really need to explore, what are you more likely inclined to do to succeed at, based on your personality, based on what you want out of life. And to me, that's something that is a disadvantage, but at the same time, it's a big advantage, because as I'll take you through my development, you'll see. And this is why I think that you guys, as young professionals today, there's so much of guidance, there's so much of focus on career development, from the time you're in high school, throughout varsity, and the skill set in providing that sort of advice has evolved. So for me, I wouldn't have known what risk management is back then, and that this may be giving away my age, right? So yeah, so that's what I started off. I started off with speech and hearing therapy, and then similar to Brett is that I kind of I went to WITS. I stayed in a res of sorts. I got caught up with on the personal side of life. There was lots of parties, this, that, and the other. And at the end of the year, I failed. And as I'm from Durban, I studied at WITS in Joburg. I went back home. And for the first time in my life, I've actually experienced failure to a degree where it impacted me mentally so much. So I went home. I actually almost had this night where I just burst out crying. And I felt guilty because my parents paid a lot of money to send me to WITS, to spend money on my education, to send me away to study. And I failed, and I felt like a big disappointment. And I'll never forget. So while I was having my nervous breakdown, crying and telling my mom that I'm so sorry to have wasted her hard-earned money, she told me something. And when I was putting this presentation together, it actually resonated. She said that I shouldn't worry because knowledge gained is never wasted. And if I look back at my career and the journey, it's so true. So I didn't learn academically that year as much as I could have. I also realized that speech and hearing therapy is something I didn't want to be a speech therapist. And more than that, I learned life skills in dealing with people. Sometimes you have a very enclosed environment when you're at home. And when you go out into the real world, you kind of think that everything's going to be fine. Everyone's going to be nice to you. And and that's what I realized, is that, you know, people are not going to be nice. Some people are going to be nice. You're going to build relationships with people. Some people are not going to be nice with you, and it's okay. You don't have to be liked by everybody, and you also need to build resilience in dealing with people. So yeah, so from the speech and hearing therapy thing, I'll be very honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to study thereafter. And, you know, the natural course and the easiest thing for me to do was the BCom, and I started a Bachelor in Commerce. I majored in Information Systems and Business Management, and I completed that degree. And once I did that, I thought, okay, someone recommended doing a software programming course. So I thought, okay, cool. Let me upskill. Let me do this course. I've completed it. I realized I really don't like programming. You know, you have to really think about it. And at the end of the day, when I was going to bed, I'm still trying to think of how to code to get this, you know, to get the thing right. And I realized, no, I really don't want to do something like this, because I want to sleep at night. You know, at that age, I wanted rather go to bed thinking of, you know, which guy looks hot. Yeah. So, anyways, I still completed the course successfully, and then I was, you know, then it was time to start looking for a job. I was very fortunate that a friend of mine was working in UNISA as a research/academic assistant, and she mentioned that a post was available. So I spoke to her, got some insights as to, you know, what the job entailed, etc. And I applied, got the job, and I worked in Pretoria at UNISA for about 3 years as a researcher/academic assistant in the computer science department. From there, after 3 years, it was actually getting a bit boring, and, you know, I think you can't stay in the same place for too long as well. So I decided that, you know, I need to look and think of something else. I then saw a company that I actually really felt, you know, a drawing towards, and it was called Derivco. And what they did was software development for online gambling. One of the things that attracted me to that company was that they had a department for usability, you know, in terms of your developing software and usability, in the sense of, you know, how do users engage with the system, or what do you take into account to develop something that's user friendly. And I hadn't seen any other jobs like, you know, similar to that. So this was like this was the only place that I really wanted to work. I researched a little bit, and the company seemed really, really cool to work for. I went on their website. I saw 2 jobs that were available there. One was a usability analyst, which is something that I wanted to get into at the time, and the other was a software configuration engineer. And I applied for the usability job, and I never got a call. And then out of frustration, I was like, okay, well, you know what? Let me just apply for the software configuration job. What's the worst that can happen? So I applied, and funnily enough, I got selected I got offered you know, an interview, and from there a job. And that's where I started at Derivco, and I started as a software configuration engineer. It was customizing in-house software. After about, I would say, 6 years, look, I knew I was good at what I was doing. I focused. I knew that the quality of everything that I did was great, but at the same time, I was getting very bored. I felt like, you know, it's the same thing day after day. I wasn't really learning much. It was very mundane. It became mundane. So I decided to check internally what other positions, and at the same time, I had to sit back and reflect on what is my current skill set, and is it something that I want to do for the rest of my life, or is it something that, you know, how can I progress? And I realized that, you know, the software configuration thing, it's not something that's my passion, that I'm, you know, I'm glad I did it and I have the skills, but it's not something that, you know, in terms of my core purpose, that I felt aligned to. So from there, I decided to check internally, what vacancies were available and what skills I could use for them. So I wasn't very sure. And I saw a role for a problem manager or problem analyst at the time. And I thought, okay, wow, this sounds really cool. Let me go and chat to the guys who are in that function and the manager of the team. And I think this is something, that I will touch on and everyone has touched on later as well. It's in terms of networking. I didn't have any fear in the sense of just going up and asking somebody, what is this job about? Because for me to apply for it, I need to understand what it's about, right? So I went up to the manager, asked him what the role is about, that sort of thing. It sounded really interesting. You do a root cause analysis when incidents occur, and it was largely in the, in the IT area, in the IT space. And so I applied for this job, and it was within the governance team as well. So there were colleagues in that team that did auditing, that performed the risk function, that sort of stuff. So I applied for the job, got it. I started within the role, and what I actually realized from working within this role is that working as a configuration engineer or even as a research assistant, and I think in a lot of different careers, you have such a focused, you have a focus on one element and you don't really see the bigger picture of the organization that you're working in. And when you are in a governance role, a risk role, compliance, audit, it's sometimes you get to see the big picture of how an organization works. And that's something that I think is such an amazing opportunity, because I realized for me that whatever I learned within these other roles that I had was nothing compared to what I learned in 3 years in a problem manager role, in terms of root cause analysis, how the company operates, who's who, those sort of things. I never would have learned those sort of views. I would never have got in any other, in my previous roles. And so I did that. For 3 years, I was a problem analyst. And one of my colleagues, and I think this speaks a lot to mentorship as well. So one of my colleagues who had been in that role for a long time, he kind of took me under his wing, in the sense that, he would tell me, okay, so this is who this person is, and this is how they like to be approached or treated. And if you want to get something done, this is the person to go to. And in all honesty, sometimes we think of mentorship in terms of a program and an official role of a mentor. And this was just a simple colleague taking me under his wing, sharing his information, and it was a wealth of knowledge. And I could go to him and ask him anything, like, who reports to who, how does this fit into the organization? And for me, that was such a great, and in terms of risk management as well, there was a focus on that. And he would give me, he would share his knowledge with me, and it was so valuable. And from a mentorship perspective, for me, that was the start of my career development in not just risk, but in a role that requires governance, risk, that sort of view, where that sort of role where you get to see the bigger picture, and you also get to understand various aspects of the business as a whole. One of the key skills that I have acquired from the role of a problem manager or problem analyst is one of the key functions is to do a root cause analysis, and you need to produce a problem document. So those were the two key skills then, was, understanding the root cause of something, and also focusing on how do you prevent something from happening. And this, again, always comes back, it does tie back into risk as well. So long story short, after 3 years in the problem management function, I started self-reflecting to understand for myself, like, what am I doing? What do I want to do? Am I happy where I am? Do I want to move? And one of the things that really stood out for me at the time was that I really felt a need to help people. And the more I felt this need to help people, the more I would say, the more I thought about this is not the right place for me, because then I started thinking, I'm working for a software development company for online gambling. I'm appreciative for the knowledge that I've had, the opportunity, my salary, but it's not aligned in my heart with helping people, and I had no idea what to do. And the more I thought of it, the more I focused on it, and so eventually I decided to take a sabbatical of my own and just try and find myself and figure out what I want to do. So I kind of quit my job, and I had basically nothing to go to. I thought I would just take some time out, self-reflect, and figure out what I want to do next. So in that year, it's about a year, a lot of things changed on the personal side, and at the same time, I couldn't just sit and just sit back and do nothing. So I decided to do a certification in business analysis with UCT, and that was just like a short, I think it was 2-month or 3-month course. And then I completed that and realized, okay, now it's also time to get back into the working world. So I started, applying for jobs. And the one thing that I realized at the time is that it's easier to get a job when you have a job, right? So I was lucky. I thought of Discovery, and look, I applied everywhere. But one of the things that I did get was an interview with Discovery for a problem manager role. And I was very lucky and grateful to have gotten the job. And it also, look, it is aligned to my sense of wanting to help people. It wasn't directly like I'm saving someone's life as a doctor, as a paramedic, but in the sense that they have a wellness program, which is Vitality, and their goal is to help people and help them be healthier. So to me, that was like really, really, really amazing. And I was really, really grateful to have gotten the job at Discovery. So I moved from Durban to Joburg, and I started as a problem manager. 9 months later, I would say I was awarded an opportunity. So as part of the problem management role in Discovery, it wasn't within Vitality, it was within the infrastructure department. And one of the things that actually came out is that I was interacting a lot with the risk management function, or with the risk manager. And it again came to light to me that I was very curious about it. It seemed interesting. I asked questions. I asked for the enterprise risk management framework, and I had to read through it, and it really, really appealed to me. So yeah. And then, sorry, I missed my slide. So this is me basically 2003 to 2018. There's been lots of changes. There's been roadblocks. I've had to take U-turns, and that was the journey. And in saying this, along this journey of changes and confusion, etc., there's a knowledge of there's so many skills that I've acquired throughout this time. So I always think of my mother saying knowledge gained is never wasted, because the skill set I acquired throughout this journey is, it doesn't matter in what role you are in, your skill set is always growing and developing in whatever you do. So that was me, 2003 to 2018, everything from software configuration engineer to problem analyst, and with and wanting to move into a risk function. And then there was an opportunity in Vitality at Discovery for a junior risk analyst in 2018, in March, I think. Yeah. So I applied for it, and I went for the interview, and I got the job. my manager at the time was pregnant and she was going on maternity leave. So she also wanted to train up somebody, you know, in the interim for the few months that she was away. And yeah, so I took the job, and when she went on maternity leave, she actually decided that she was going to make it a permanent thing and not come back to work. So here I was, you know, I was with her for almost about 6 months, and she did teach me quite a bit of you know, of how the function works and you know what needs to be done. But in 6 months, I honestly think that you really don't know everything. You don't know how things fit. I didn't know how things fitted into, you know, into place, the building blocks, etc. And she went on maternity leave and she did a handover. And by the way, this is you know, one piece of advice that I would you know, give to anybody, especially young professionals, because you may change jobs, you may change companies, you know, throughout your career, is don't expect a perfect handover. And the thing is, my manager left. There was no perfect handover. She did what she could, and it's okay. So here I am in a risk manager role. What I thought it was versus what it actually entailed was really worlds apart. And there's so many building blocks. There's so many pieces that I couldn't fit in my head. I couldn't, you know, fit into my practical role either initially, and it was very challenging. But for me, the thing is that, you know, I had to persevere, and I had to think about it. I had to think of new things. I had to think of how do I upskill myself. And you know, one of the other things that, you know, as part of a risk management function or profession or role, is that you're not always going to report to a risk manager who has that background. So for me, one of the things that happened is that I report to the chief actuary for Vitality. And as much as they will know and will have some skills and background and understanding of risk management, they may not always know how the structure fits into the bigger organization. They'll learn it along the way. And yeah, so it's not to say you're always going to have the manager that is coming from a proper risk management background. If you do, you're lucky, and if you don't, it's a really big opportunity to learn and find your way. And when you look back, you'll be really proud of yourself. So yeah, so 2018, my manager left. I was now the risk analyst for Vitality, or risk manager for Vitality, and I just kept learning. And one of the things that you know, was key is that I just couldn't fit in some pieces in my head. Practically, I had lots of support. So I made friends with one of the risk managers, and whenever I needed something or I didn't understand something, I'd go to her and she'd help me and she'd tell me, how did it work? How doesn't it work? So it's not as simple as just saying, you know, we're doing a risk assessment. It's so much more than that. So, and looking back now from where I started in 2018, which, you know, it's been almost 3 years, my journey for me, it means that I actually feel like I belong. And I actually see the road ahead, and I see the light at the end of the tunnel for the first time, like, you know, in a long time. And it's not to say that the journey ahead is not going to be long, because I think you will always learn. And in a risk management function in particular, you'll always be learning. And if you're not learning, you actually need to stop and ask yourself why. So yeah, from a professional development, I'm actually very comfortable now in what I do, in the knowledge that I've gained, and you know, and I'm actually excited about how I can, you know, change things, or you know, make improvements, those sort of things. And so yeah, sorry, I don't know if I took too much of time, but that was my you know, the professional development. Right. What does a risk manager role mean to me, and how do I get it right? So a picture says 1,000 words, and again, my bad PowerPoint. I thought I'd just put a few pictures together. So the first thing to me, you know, in a risk manager role or a risk management role, the one thing that's key is that you are a change agent. And you're there to help business, help influence them in the right way, and make a difference, right? So to me, it's not a case to say you do this awesome risk assessment and you have these recommendations and business are just going to say, okay, let me just do what you recommended. It doesn't always work that way. And the point is that you don't have to look at it only in isolation if you're trying to be an influencer. If that doesn't work, you need to like sit back and think, how else can I bring about change? How else can I influence business? And sometimes you have to take your small wins. You're not, look, and this is personal to me, what I'm, what I want to present is to see how I see the role. So I like, it's not to say you're going to have this massive impact and this massive difference immediately. You're going to have to build it. You build it over time. You're going to make mistakes along the way. It's trial and error. But so you are a change agent, and as part of being a change agent, it's not something that that's easy. It's something that you have to work at. It's something that you have to think of. You have to think outside of the box all the time to see how are you going to improve and how are you going to assist your business in, doing better. And the second thing is the big picture. And this is something that for me, when I started in the risk management role, is that I realized that I was involved in all of these meetings, and I was getting invited to some exco meetings, various cross-functional meetings. I had a wealth of knowledge. I was included in a lot of emails, but what am I doing with this information? And the thing is, to me, the really special thing about a risk management role is that you get to see the bigger picture. You get to see the picture that nobody else is seeing, and you can actually fit it together, because a lot of the functions are working in isolation as subject matter experts for themselves. But you have this view, and you have this view, and you have this information, and you need to use it to to bring about the change that you want to help business, to influence business, to make better decisions, or to give them information. Give them information to make decisions, because the view that you have is so unique, and the experience that you gain in as part of this it's so valuable, because you're always learning, and you're learning, and you have the bigger picture. So to me, that's very key. And the next one, so I really like this slide, this meme. So what if I told you your feedback could determine our future? And to me, this ties into the value that you would add as part of your function. And, sometimes people may not see the value, and it's okay, but sometimes it's you that knows that you've added the value. It doesn't have to be something big. It can be something small. And people may not see the value that you're adding, but you know what you're doing, and you know the long-term value of it. So, and the thing for me is that, it's not always about reporting. And I think in a risk function, or, that any function for that matter, there's a lot of focus on reporting. And, I think for me, the thing is, there's so many reports that go out, who's actually reading them? So as much as it's important, are you really adding the value, and how can you add it? And I think from a risk role, you have the ability to do so. So you can really add value, but it's up to you to, to actually think about it and understand your business and see how you can add value. You may still have to do your reports at the end of the day, but it could be something so small that, you build yourself up to a point where people come to you and ask you for advice. So for me, value is definitely, a big thing, because it ties into job satisfaction as well. And then the last one I've got here is, this is also very funny. It's brace yourself, risk is coming, right? And this ties into the perception that people have. So look, I'll be honest, as much as the role is a risk management role is so exciting, and you learn so much, there's also the perception from various people that you work with. Some people are going to see you as a tick box exercise. Some people on a senior management level, they're going to see the value of what you're doing within your role. And, you know, so there is a perception that there can be a negative perception from some people. There can be a positive perception. People can see the value. And I'll be honest, generally at the senior management level, there's more likely that, you know, the perception is a valued perception. And, you know, sometimes people don't know what risk is. So a funny thing, right? My husband is a product owner. And I was talking to him about like his perception, because we work from home. I sometimes can hear him at meetings. So he has meetings with the risk manager, then he gets audited sometimes, and then he has to meet with the auditing teams. And I asked him, do you know the difference between risk and audit? And he just smiled. So as much as he's engaging with, you know, these people and the different functions, if you ask him what's the difference, and then it actually made me think. And I asked another colleague of mine, who's not in any of these professions, like, do you know the difference? And he's like, no, and they just brush off the question. So it's actually very, very interesting, the perception that people have. And I think this ties into the fact that you have the ability to change it. And, so yeah, I actually think it's a very funny one, perception. And in order to, so how do you get it right? So for me, you know, the building blocks, to be comfortable, I'm not even going to use the word successful. For me, it's to be comfortable in what I'm doing, is I need a theoretical background. Then there is a focus on the practical element. And, you know, how does IRMSA actually help you? And, you know, this ties in, very closely in, personally for me, is in terms of the theoretical background, the CRM prac has been a wealth of knowledge. And, you know, it was really a great exam. So I wrote it twice. The first time I had a serious personal crisis, and I really couldn't focus. So I failed, and I'm not ashamed to tell you, I failed it the first time, and I wasn't afraid of writing it the second time, and I passed. So it's that theoretical, knowledge that you would get from writing the CRM prac, and as well as attending the IRMSA training courses. There's a lot of theoretical, knowledge that you can get. And as part of the training courses, you could also just ask questions. You can ask practical questions. In terms of the practical side of it, look, one of the biggest, contributors to me in terms of being very comfortable in my profession right now was the IRMSA mentorship program. So I was assigned a mentor. We had weekly catch-ups, and one of the most amazing things was that I could ask him like anything, and based on what went through my mind during the week, something I came across, and ask him about how something in terms of the audit function ties into the risk. Something as simple as how do you know when a risk is big enough to put to escalate it, that sort of practical questions, or the questions that I could ask him that tied into my work practically was just like a wealth of knowledge that was shared with me. And I'll be honest, like, I'm really, really grateful for the mentorship program. It's made a world of difference. So if you guys ever, have the opportunity to join that mentorship program, I would highly recommend it. Then the next thing that I think, how do you get your role right? How do you get it right to be comfortable is resilience. For me, this is definitely something as a young professional, and along the way in life in general, that you should have is you need to be resilient in this role, I think, as opposed to a lot of other roles as well. So resilience is definitely something. And I think with COVID and the pandemic and all of these things and working from home, there's a lot of challenges. So yeah, resilience is definitely something that's also key. And lastly, I think don't lose your sense of humor. So you sit in a lot of meetings sometimes and everybody's serious, and you just have to sometimes take a step back, laugh at yourself. If you make a mistake, you own up to it, but, laugh at yourself and have the ability to laugh at yourself. Don't take everything too seriously. So a lot of people associate risk in a very serious light. And, you know, it's not, it really, it doesn't have to be the case. Your personality is your own. Have fun, or find the fun. So sometimes it's not going to be blaringly in your face. You have to make it, you have to find the fun for yourself, basically. So for me, these are the, you know, the 4 pillars that I think, you know, are crucial in getting it right to be comfortable in my job. And then the last slide I have is the other stuff. So for me, the other stuff is, you know, these are things that I think people don't tell you. They don't tell you as part of your, theoretically, or sometimes your managers may not tell you. And I think these are, for me, these are very crucial and key. The first thing is understand, and especially as a graduate or somebody new or a young professional, understand your environment or your organization. You know, if you're starting off new, ask for your organogram, your company organogram, and understand what your environment is about. Understand who's who in the environment. When you sit in a meeting, it will fit into play. It will fit in your head over time, maybe, but you need to focus on understanding your organization and your environment. So the relationship building or networking, it is key. And I think that as a young professional or a graduate, you may not focus on it, but try to, you know, set up a coffee. And I get that with COVID, there is, you know, lots of challenges with relationship building, but it is something key. You need to build relationships with all of your stakeholders, know who they are, build a relationship, network, use IRMSA as a networking tool as well. It doesn't always have to be internally, you know, within your organization. Yeah, thirdly, think out of the box. Be curious about what you're doing. You know, in order to change something, you can't think the same way that you've always been thinking. You know, be curious, and the risk function actually affords you the opportunity to be curious. You have resources available for you to actually, you know, get more information, or, you know, that sort of stuff. So look, I also think ownership is definitely key. And I think it's something that, you know, it doesn't apply to you only within a risk function. Take ownership of anything and everything that you do. And I think you can't not be successful if you do that. You know, don't, how do I say, like, don't do the same things over and over and, you know, expect it to work. Think out of the box and take ownership, and people will recognize you. They will see. The next one is continuous improvement. So, you know, on a personal and a professional level. On a personal level, don't wait for your manager to say, let's try and understand your personal development. Take ownership of it for yourself and focus on it. Understand what your needs are. IRMSA is also there to help you. That's not within your organization. On a professional level, you can also, you know, you need to think, how do I change things within the business? How do I help people? Or how do I help business? How do I make them, you know, see things differently? You need to, you know, to be a change agent, you also need, part of the function is you need to monitor change. It's very simple. If you don't monitor change that's happening within your organization, also within yourself personally, you know, it's very challenging to move forward if you don't. You have to, you know, be on top of things. And in order to monitor change, this is where your, you know, understanding your organization and your relationship building and curiosity comes in. Sorry, that was too fast. The last one was learn PowerPoint. I'm not having, I don't have the skills, and it's on my to-do list. Yeah, sorry. And yeah, that's me. Sorry if I think I might have went way over time.
Hi, Asha. Thank you so much. I'm hearing an echo on my side, so I hope it's not echoing on anybody else's side there. But I'll continue regardless. Asha, thank you very much for your time. It was lovely going along your risk and personal journey over the years. I think one thing that stood out is that your career path was not clear cut from the onset. There were some twists and turns, U-turns, T-junctions, sabbaticals. And I think that's very important to note for all of us. I think sometimes we start out and we think it's this clear-cut journey and that everybody's always known what they want to do, why they want to do it. But the key lesson that I'm taking away from your talk is self-reflection is really important, but to leverage off people around you that you can trust. Like you said, I think at some point, the people around you in the beginning didn't necessarily know how to give the right career guidance, but at the end of it all, you realize that knowledge gained is never wasted. And I think that's very important. There's always something to learn, whether it's academic or life skills. I think it's important to sit back, reflect, and realize what can you take away from something and how can you implement it and do better the next time. There's many key things, especially near the end there, that you shared with us in terms of the 4 pillars of a great risk manager. And I actually giggled to myself because before you started listing those out, the 2 words that stood out for me personally throughout your talk was the word resilience and it was the word humor. And you happened to put those 2 very same words at the end of your 4 key pillars. And I think that's so great that you embody that. But yeah, I'm sure I can go on and on, but before I continue, does anybody have any specific questions for Asha? I'm not sure if my chat function is completely reflecting real time. So if anybody's got a question, if you can just put your hands up and then I'll try and take one. It doesn't seem to be the case, but then again, like I said, IRMSA will be putting up a poll at some point throughout this chat with regard to the CRM prac. And Asha, I also just want to thank you for being so open and honest and brave to share that you'd written your CRM prac twice. The one thing that I keep hearing, and I think Brett's also alluded to it, that it's nothing simple. It definitely takes time. But I think it's very brave when you've decided to do something, you've committed, that just because one's failed once doesn't mean that you can't do it again. And there's a great success story there. You put your mind to it, and second time around, despite all of the circumstances, you managed to come out on top. So congratulations to that. And I hope that inspires everybody else that's got a little bit of fear in terms of studying or studying again and taking the board exam. But yes, Asha, thank you very much. I'll now move on to our final speaker, Mr. Phil Tillman. As Jill mentioned in her opening, he was one of the first people that Jill had met. And when I joined the Institute, he was also one of the core faces there that I recall from my first day stepping into IRMSA. So let me introduce him. Philip is an entrepreneur, having started a business in techno. He's currently the CEO of Galvanize in Africa, a company that distributes the world's top GRC software to companies and government entities in over 30 African subsidiaries. Before this, Phil worked in a few technology firms in South Africa after immigrating from London in 2005. Philip has an MBA and did a thesis on enterprise risk management, maturity, and the effect on shareholder value. So with that great background, Phil, we look forward to hearing what you have to share with us today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Eleni. I remember you too. So it's nice to see everybody. Quite a few numbers and some interesting people on the call, and some recognized names. So in terms of my mandate today, it was to kind of give a presentation very much centered around kind of my journey and thinking out of the box and doing something a little bit differently. And to do that, I'm going to share my screen, which is going to include a bit of sound. To qualify, I'm not a risk manager. I've never been in the profession, to either the good or the bad of that. Okay, so let me share. Okay, so it should say all the good stuff in life comes to those who, and now I've lost my little chat, which is very annoying because I want to say it back. And the answer to that question, if anyone gets this music, it's from what movie? Some youngsters in it's from The Lone Ranger, and the answer is it's about people who write their own story. And one of the questions I want to ask and this is filling up my whole screen frustratingly. One of the questions I actually want to be able to ask is, I'm just going to stop sharing. Sorry, my screen has gone completely haywire here. And talk about the fact that part of my argument is that when I was, I grew up in the UK. Everything was taken care of. We had this great social net. My parents were in the Air Force. I was an officer's child. I was expected to go into the military like my parents. And the word entrepreneur didn't exist, and neither did many of the other careers. And so I wasn't really exposed to the kind of things that, well, certainly nothing like this, that many careers and the choices that people had. And as a result, I made the mistake of doing what I thought was the right thing. And I loved sport. I was a great sports player, so I thought, let's be a sports teacher. In hindsight, sports teachers don't earn a great deal of money or have a great career, but they would have enjoyed it. And so I worked in corporate for many years in London, and then I moved to South Africa in 2005. And worked here for about 5 or 6 years. And I was in the middle of the MBA at Gibbs, which, by the way, is an amazing institution to learn. And I quote myself, at the age of 35, I woke up. I literally woke up and I realized that all the stuff that's around me, I don't know if it's because I was learning in academia and structure, has been created by somebody else. So quite literally, I've moved countries, but I was sitting in a country, and this country was made up by people who sat around a table and decided, I'm going to put this border here. That border on Namibia? Well, we're just going to make that completely straight. And then the other people are going to put that country over there. And even the country I was living in was something kind of completely made up by people. I was working in a company that somebody sat and said, well, I'll tell you what, let me start a company. And I'll do this. And that is true whether you work at a large bank or you work in a small company. I was working in an organization that somebody had conceived of. And I was working in a role that somebody had sat and decided, well, we need a role. And I was measured on key performance indicators that somebody had said, well, this is how I want to be able to judge that person. And I thought to myself, well, do I really want my locus of control to be completely outside of myself? Or do I actually want to take some control of this life? And do I want to make myself in control and effectively write my own story? And to that, Simon Sinek, who's a pretty famous guy now, he started with the book Start With Why. I am just going to share my screen again. And he did an amazing video on a new concept that he's come up with. And this concept, I'm going to play a video as we do this and just fast forward to 1 minute 47 seconds to be able to do it. Thank you.
Full, if I may,
yep.
I'm not sure.
My sound broke. I apologize, guys.
No
Let
problem.
me stop doing that. It means I need to completely reshare. So every time you do this, the advantage of Zoom over Teams. Thank you for that. Let me stop sharing. And when you share again, I'm going to share the sound this time.
A philosopher by the name of James Carse articulated these two kinds of games. He said, if you have at least one competitor, a game exists, and there are two types of games, finite games and infinite games. A finite game is defined as known players, fixed rules, and an agreed upon objective. Football. There's always a beginning, middle, and end. The objective is to win. There's usually a winner and there's usually a loser. Then there are infinite games. Infinite games are defined as known and unknown players. The rules are changeable, which means you can play however you want. And the objective is to perpetuate the game, to stay in the game as long as possible. There's no finish line in an infinite game. And we are players in all kinds of infinite games that we don't even realize. For example, there's no such thing as being number one in your marriage. You can be number two, but you can't be number one.
So since this isn't marriage advice, I'll move on from that. And really, what that said to me and I saw it recently, but it really resounded enormously, is that we're often taught when people give you KPIs and when you're looking at year-end reviews and people tell you what your career should look like and you need to do this degree to get that level, that's a very finite game, right? You're with a bunch of people and you're all studying for 3 years to get to the same goal and you pass or you fail. But life is an infinite game. And it's entirely up to you how you want to play it. Now, I only caught the end of the last presentation and somebody talked about going back to college. And in context, I did a sports degree. I was expelled from 2 schools. I was possibly a little bit naughty. And I'm anything but an academic. And then in my mid-30s, I decided I'm going to go do an MBA. Then I ended up on the dean's list for some reason. And now I've started doing a UK degree in law. Even though I'm already a successful entrepreneur, and simply because I've decided these are the things that I want to be able to do. And I've given myself permission to say, well, that's the road that I want to be able to go down. And I was in a court case not too long ago, and I had a 55-year-old advocate. And until 45, he was an accountant and said, well, actually, I hate accounting. I'm going to study law and I want to go and be an advocate. And now he's an amazing advocate who advocates in the context of financial crimes because of the background he had in accounting. And so really, this is about giving yourself permission to not be bound by all of the things that our society has told us are true. If you think about the clothes that you're wearing, if you're wearing a tie today, think about when people started wearing ties and cravats and where that goes back to and where it's come from. We're wearing what socially people have told us it's acceptable to be able to do. We're working in organizations. We're living lives that people have told us it's socially acceptable to be able to do. And some of that, of course, is true and we need a general norm. But many of that is that we're in the herd. And really writing your own story is how do you get out of the herd, and that can be in corporate or that can be in your own business, it can be in life, it can be in any way that you want. How do you get out of the herd and make sure you're doing your own thing in your own way? And when do you do it? And I'm hoping the sound comes through on this one as well. The question often is when do I do this? Do I do this now? And in order to do this, if people think that there's been a lot of recent Batmans, it's certainly not Ben Affleck. This is the original Batman.
Friends, I'm a man of few words, but a man of many riddles. So riddle me this. What is it that is always coming but never arrives? Quickly, quickly.
We ain't tuned in on the riddle bit, Chief.
Yeah, we give up. What is it that is always coming but never arrives?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow. But when it arrives, it is today. And today, my dear rodents, should prove to be most memorable.
And it's incredible. I speak at a lot of organizations. I speak at universities and entrepreneur courses and so on. And the constant answer I get is tomorrow. And now I presented this conversation in the context of young professionals. And I'm incredibly jealous because you have something I don't, which is probably on average another 20 years of making mistakes that I don't have to make. But I don't have the gift of yesterday. That's completely gone. And I sat when I decided to go on my own. I was in turn my sound off. I was in a lecture theatre, and we had to give a 1-minute presentation on starting a business in an entrepreneur course. And that day, I went back and said, well, I'm not going to do this tomorrow. It never arrives. Literally that evening, I went back. I resigned my job. This isn't marriage advice. I decided to get divorced. I didn't sell my kids, you'll be glad to know. Sold my house. I completely liquidated my entire life and decided to go and put all of that into being able to go and start a business and, kind of live the dream that I wanted to live, which was really about a lifestyle more than it was just about the money. But for years, in fact, for a decade and a half, I'd been saying tomorrow, I'm doing it tomorrow, whatever it might be. And I realized that the only time I can do it is now, literally today, I'm going to go do that. And I've encouraged many people to start businesses, to start courses and the like. And my argument is that if there's people in this room, if you think about the things you failed at, it's very, very few on average. Some of you you'll think none at all. So my generator's just come on from load shedding. So I think my UPS should stay on. We're able to, sorry, just let me get my thought track back. You don't fail at much. The problem is many people just don't start. And because we don't fail at stuff, whatever we start, in general, we finish. So the problem is, what do we start? What do we actually go out and say, okay, I'm going to go and do this today? And it can be as small as grandiose as you might want. I can tell you now, anyone who knows me from school or college and the idea of me doing a law degree will laugh. But I'm starting, and so I'll finish. I may not get a first-class degree, but I'll finish. And so there's this adage out there says success and failure are two sides of the same coin. Flip the coin and enjoy the game. I think this is utter nonsense. The other side of success is not trying, not failure. We're going to fail at tons of stuff, right? Doing one particular thing and trying to do it means you will come across failures all the time. I certainly did. But the flip side of success was that we didn't even try. Because if you try something, you'll come out with an outcome. And I'll give you a couple of examples that I often use to do this. Because organized people are so scared. We have this loss aversion in our mind. If you speak to people about whether they would give up 100 Rand to try something, almost nobody would do it. If you told them to try something and they could win 100 Rand, almost everybody would try. And that's a human failing called loss aversion. We're much more scared of having something and losing it. But you may or may not know that Nokia started out as a rubber company and ended up doing mobile phones. Then they got bought by Microsoft, and that's a different story. Shell, as an organization, first started collecting shells. That was what they did. They imported shells. It just so happens that if you dig deep enough underneath shells, you'll find some oil. But that wasn't where they started out or what they wanted to be able to do. HP started building transistor radios in this example. And the worst failing of all is Hugo Boss designed the Nazi outfit. How do you come back from that? But he did, or they did as an organization, of course. And so my argument to this is that failure is an absolute step on the road to success. It's not the other side of the coin whatsoever. Not starting something or doing something is. And if I could say anything to young professionals, it would be to just realize that the constraints that your parents had don't exist on you. A, because you're not them and you didn't have their parents to give that. B, because your technology environment is different. You have access to all the information on the planet to be able to do anything, but you can try and do whatever you want and to be able to achieve. Those constraints are not yours. And great examples of look where organizations started from and how small they were. And again, I often speak in the context of entrepreneurship, and I'm now an entrepreneur. Believe me, I wasn't. I was a normal employee in the context of an organization for many years, and I was frustrated, and I wanted to do something very particular. Other people's way of writing their own story could be completely different. It could be doing a particular job that allows them half day to being able to kind of spend time with their children or family and go and see their kids' soccer games or netball games or whatever it may be. So give yourself permission. It took me a long time to realize that I don't need anyone else's permission. And I feel that growing up, we're taught to respect our parents, which I don't disagree with, but they're not necessarily the best authority on career advice, to listen to your teachers, who definitively are not the best people for career advice. They must love their job, but that may not work with you. There are so many different personalities. And then you go into an organization whose very natural bias is to get them to do what they want you to do. Give yourself permission to write your own story, which will, in the majority of cases, will be about how you write your own story in terms of growing into an organization and being successful. There's a lady who just listed the dating app on a stock exchange. So she's now the youngest billionaire ever. She just surpassed the lady who started Spanx. And she was the co-founder at Tinder and fundamentally disagreed with what they were doing. And so then went on to go and start Bumble, and now Bumble is listed and done incredibly well. So she decided, no, actually, I think dating should look like this. I'm going to go start a dating app that looks like that, which gives women centricity and control around dating apps, and immense respect to be able to do that. But again, she gave herself permission to do it. And so my question is, what are you waiting for? If you're waiting, are you waiting for somebody to give you permission to do something? You're waiting for yourself to give yourself permission to be able to do it? And I found that certainly my background, which was a very structured growth path. My parents joined my father was in the military, my uncle was in the military, my grandfather was in the military. The idea that you don't do something for 35 years consistently was absurd to them. And so I had to break away from this norm that I had been taught. I had to give myself permission to be able to do it. And a great quote from Michael Jordan about he's missed more than 9,000 shots, lost 300 games. He's been trusted to take the winning shot and he's missed. He's failed over and over and over, and that's why he's succeeded. And again, because he tried, and that's the flip side of the coin for succeeding. And so I'm not going to play this video because it's a few minutes, but I am going to upload the PDF into this, and I've deliberately put the links into the PDF, and at the bottom you can see that exactly what time I recommend you go into. But this is a speech by a guy called Art Williams, which was out and out broke, couldn't afford his father's funeral, and so started a life insurance company, became incredibly successful, and effectively created a business where he uses brokers and makes them successful. And he talks about whatever it is you do, just do it. Long before Nike came up with the logo, just do it and 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 do it. And when somebody says it's hurting, then you keep doing it and you keep going on whatever it is that your story is that you're trying to be able to build. So again, I'll upload this into the chat afterwards and you'll be able to link to that.
Art Williams.
So I'm not going to play that. So again, this is about giving yourself permission to be able to do that. And that's what I woke up. And I'd like to add that there's nothing special about me. And when I was studying, especially in South Africa, because it doesn't have a social net, so people have to look after themselves, and you grow up much younger here, I think, to be able to do that. And I was very jealous of these 25 to 30-year-olds. I was looking at them thinking, how have they got their stuff together? And they know what they're doing, and they've got this path, and they're writing a story, and they understand. And here I am thinking, I don't have any of that. And so I was inspired by others really to copy them and think, let me write my own to be able to do that. And here's a few reference books that I've put on there. Now, some of them are very concentrated around business and wealth creation and so on, but not entirely so. The most successful person on the planet for me, without any question, is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Not because I'm a bodybuilder, which if you look at me, I think you can confirm visually. It's because first he became Mr. Universe, and he won still a record of 7 titles, and he became effectively the dominant force in that. Then he became a multimillionaire property investor. People think it was the other way around. Then he became the world's highest grossing actor at the time. And then he became the governor of California, which is, if you measure it as a country, is the 4th biggest country in the world, and the highest you can get to as a if you're not born in the United States. This guy was successful in 4 completely separate sections of his life, entirely because of what he calls work ethic. And effectively, when he was doing weightlifting, what he used to do is write on the board he put 10 lines, and every time he finished a set, he'd cross one off. So he'd make sure that he did his sets. He would always practice. And he has a picture of his acceptance speech when he became the governor of California. And across the top, you can see he's done the same thing. He made sure he practiced that speech 10 times using exactly the same methodology. He just did it and did it and did it. So making a decision, deciding what you want, and giving yourself permission, and then just working hard enough to be able to do it, is really what I would consider like what has woken me up to success and being able to achieve that. I'd like to clarify there are many more successful people. I don't necessarily enjoy talking about myself too much, but I do like saying to people that I was stuck in this process, which I call sleepwalking. I'm actually writing a book called The Boy That Woke Up. And at 35, I realized how structured my life was based on everything I'd been taught in a very Anglo-Saxon world. And maybe it was because I was in a country where everything was so different that I realized that is such a narrow view of life, that there is so much more to it, and that it truly can be whatever you write. So again, all of these books will have links on them on the PDF, and you can click on them and go to them, and they are incredible stories of how you create your own story. So again, no matter what your life is, whatever your aspirations might be, whatever your profession might be, whatever your circumstances might be, all the good stuff comes to people who decide what they want their life to be able to be, to write their own story in personal, professional, and health contexts, and they're the people who go and make those happen. I hope that that's been some guidance to thinking that there's, opening mind to thinking that there's other things out there necessarily speaking. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, which will give me the opportunity to kind of see if there's any questions on the question list, which I'm very happy to be able to add and talk to. And so I now can see the question. I would just quickly ask a question out there. Is there anything you think in your life that you do every day, that wasn't decided by somebody else who thought, well, actually, that's the way it should be done? Like in the chat, just kind of add a comment. I'm just going to add a question mark and make sure the chat's working. Yes, it is. And you say, is there anybody come up with something? I'm glad you'll start. That's great. Is there anything that somebody can think of that they do that isn't created by somebody sitting saying, this is how you're going to do it? Right, this is how the context will be. You're going to go onto your phone and you're going to use it because a designer decided that you're going to do it that way. You use a bunch of apps because they're doing that. And that's the way they decided to do it. Microsoft tell you how that PC is working and also how you're going to connect on Teams to be able to do it. Any thoughts? Raising your kids, great example. So it's interesting you say that you're not doing it the way somebody else does it, but if you're sending them to school, you're doing it on a Victorian system based back in the 1870s, which was actually designed to be able to raise good professionals to work in the industries and not necessarily educate everyone. But I do understand your point, is that in that you can have whatever latitude you want, right? And you can write the story of your own children. And I think that's an amazing example to be able to do it. So Elsa be great example. And so you know, there's very few examples where one can actually consider, actually, I decided that this is the way I'm going to do it. I decided this is what I'm going to live. And the interesting onset is COVID, where suddenly where we work and generate our money and where we live and explore our lives are no longer, they're now potentially mutually exclusive. That is a massive change. One of the things COVID has done is accelerate by at least 8 to 10 years the ability to mutually exclusive say where I live my life and where I make my money are completely separate by country, by location, anything. So if your dream is to go and surf and live on the beach, you could now do that and be a professional risk manager in a large organization potentially. Because organizations, I promise you, are sitting there thinking, how do I get rid of this massive real estate overhead to be able to do it? So with that, I'll kind of hand it back to Eleni and ask if there's any final questions and then sign off.
Hello, Phil. Thank you so much. What a bright and inspiring note to end off today's session with. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I think it's definitely challenged us to sit back and reflect and think, are we just living inside a box? Are we thinking differently, or are we just following the norm? And how do we actually break that box and live a life that is actually true to ourselves? And that will look different for every single person here on this call. So thank you for leaving us with that big and important thought, amongst many of the other key nuggets that she left us with. I unfortunately can't see any of the questions, so as I'm going along, I'd please like to encourage you, the attendees, to just raise your hands if you've got any questions for Philip or any of the earlier on speakers. I'm sure they would love to answer some of your questions, but while we wait for some hands to come up, I just want to note that I think there were a couple of key core themes that came across in all three talks this morning. It was actually quite interesting to see. Every single one of the speakers, and I'm not sure if the attendees noticed or noted it, that all of them had faced, hi Edith, I'll get to your point right now. All of them had experienced failure of some sorts. And I know many of us are so scared of failure and we make it out to be such a big bad thing. But it's such an important part of life, and the important thing is not to be scared of failure, and that failure, like Phil said, is not the opposite of success. It's not trying that is. So failure is part and parcel, but it's how you respond, which is what Brett said. So yeah, that's one of the things. I'll get to the rest, but let's see here what, I think it was Edith. Edith, if you can unmute and perhaps ask your question.
Thank you so much. I just want to ask a question here. If as a risk manager or head of a department, or maybe just a boss, how would you like to be approached? Maybe by somebody, an upcoming risk professional. What approach would you like? Because I think with me, my approach is I tend to ask everybody or anyone that I feel maybe will help with my career progression. I don't mind sending a text. I don't mind sending an email, or just communicating to them or asking questions. Because I mean, what is it that I've got to lose by sending a message? But it can get a bit disheartening if you don't get a response. So maybe my approach is somewhat wrong. I just want to know what an effective approach would be when dealing with such. Thank you.
Lenny, I'm not sure who that question is to.
So,
it's to anybody.
Pardon, Edith?
I'm saying it's to anybody.
Yeah, Phil, if I may, I think you would be the perfect person. All I could hear while she was speaking was just do it and do it and do it and do it. So please do take this question.
So my question is absolutely. I went to a presentation about 4 years ago by a guy whose whole modus operandi was to write one-page letters, and in doing so, he managed to get into the UK version of kind of of the White House, which is 10 Downing Street, just by writing letters. So I would absolutely write that personal email. I'd find their phone number. I'd WhatsApp them. I cannot think of anyone I know who, if somebody called, said, could I please have half an hour of your time for some career advice or advice on this, that would say no to you. I cannot fathom of a single person who would say that. They might tell you they're not available for a month, in which case say, when are they in the diary? And everybody reads their WhatsApps now. So I would just say do it. And one of the things that you might be shy and humble, and I was like that too, didn't reach out, didn't ask. I promise you people want to give this. So I would encourage it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Edith, and thank you for the answer, Phil. What was lovely, what came to my mind now while you were speaking is you can't fathom that there are people that wouldn't be willing to help. I think that's testament to say that you are the company you keep, and I think that is also one important thing to keep in mind, that you are most like the 5 people you spend most time with. So I think that's a lovely testament to yourself, Phil, but also probably some encouragement to those listening in that just be sure to align yourselves with people that share your values, and I think that's one great way to move forward in life. While we wait perhaps for another question or two, please don't be shy. There's no such thing as failure or a silly question if we haven't learned that yet. So please, if anybody has a question or even just a comment. Pumelele, hi. You can just unmute and perhaps state who you'd like to ask the question to as well. You haven't unmuted yet.
So how are y'all?
There we go, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Pumelele, and with me, what the question I would like to find out is, to the institution actually, to the risk management institution. What I'll find out is, how do we get hold of the mentorship program? Because to be honest, I'm one of the few who, is in the path whereby we don't know actually where our career path is going. Maybe we have started internal auditing, but now we ended up finding ourselves doing accounting or whatever, but we still are interested in getting back to the risk management field. But now our career path is all over the place. We're not sure where we're going. So we would like to just get a hands of the mentorship program or someone who can just, mentor us. How do we get access to it?
So if I may ask, Rox, I'm not sure if somebody from IRMSA can share a little bit more specific details, but in the meantime, Pumelele, the Student Membership Forum is catering for that very same question. What we're aiming to achieve is to try help those that have either decided or are deciding or questioning, all of the above. Like I'd mentioned in the opening, the whole space in between before you decide what your next is. And we're here to support and guide you through that. So we welcome you to contact us. I see Valerie has just put her hand up. She is in the IRMSA team, and she'll now give you a little bit more detail on that. So Val, I'll let you take the floor here now.
Good morning, Valerie here, and thank you so much for your question. Just to say that we, within the Student Forum Committee, these are the exact initiatives that we talk about. And IRMSA has a very active mentorship program. We finished a really successful mentorship program last year. We will be launching quite a few mentorship programs within the year. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind just dropping us an email or dropping me your email in the chat, and I will reach out to you and ensure that all of the attendees in this call actually get access to those mails and information when we do launch those mentorship programs. So thank you. Thank you, Eleni.
All right, thank you so much for that, Val. So as Val mentioned, please just pop your details in the chat and the IRMSA team will get back to you. I see that there is one question here to Phil again. Phil, I'm not too sure who this question is from, but the question is, how do you cope with the wider family responsibilities?
Oh, that's an interesting one. As a divorcee, I'm not sure that I did. And you know, your story is your story. You want to be able to write. Of course, there's only so many hours in the day. And your personal prioritization is an interesting debate as to where it needs to be. And I suspect women have a bigger problem with this traditionally, as they're more tend to be the caregivers. And but increasingly, as successful females have shown, that they simply don't need to. They've increasingly written their own story. Now, in my particular case, my answer was to minimize my time from work. I spend 5 minutes going to work, and so there's other 2 hours a day. I do have time for my family. Now, I was lucky to be able to do that, but I sacrificed. I moved into an apartment rather than living in a big house. I know some people decide to go live in a nice big plot in Centurion and spend 2 hours a day in traffic. To me, that's unfathomable. So again, I think it's about the story that you want to be able to write. But again, I do think COVID's going to change this as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Phil. Thank you. I see we've got one question from Tsungai and then Christian Fay. If we can get to those questions, perhaps Tsungai can go first, and if you can kindly also just address to who the question is.
All right. My question is to Philip. I just want to know that I'm also a foreign national from Zimbabwe, and I moved trying to make as well a radical change. And worse with COVID now and all the structures that are being put up, how do you cope in the current political climate and the economic climate when basically it seems as if the odds are technically against you as a foreign national?
Indeed. So that's an interesting question, because when I first arrived in South Africa, I spoke to a recruiter on the phone, and they knew my name was Philip, but that was it. And they said to me, "But you're white." And I said, "How do you know I'm white? All the black people where I live sound like this." And I wasn't ready for the kind of the prejudices that you're referring to there. Whether correct or not is not the point. And so my view on that was that I simply had to work much harder. Interestingly, because of my background, people thought I was overqualified for the roles. So I couldn't get a job when I moved to South Africa because of my background. They thought I was overqualified and I couldn't get anything. So I went back to literally starting from the bottom again. And you know, there are prejudices, and I completely agree with you on that. In South Africa in that regard, and my only view on that was to work very hard. You know, there was a comment that I didn't mention in my thing, which is that I'd like to clarify that there's nothing special about me. I have no special talents, and neither do any of you. Right? No, unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger is a great example. Unless you're so physically defined that your DNA has made you special, and of course, sports players are a great example, and there's a few geniuses, and maybe you're one of those. But I'm talking to the majority who aren't. Everything else is work ethic. Money, background, education is great. Work ethic levels the playing field. And in truth, to answer your question, maybe you need to put 2 hours a day in more than the person who isn't a Zimbabwean in order to get your foot in the door to be able to do it. I'm not saying it's right. It wasn't right that I had to do it, but that's what I had to do as well. And that would be my answer to that question. Except you, Duncan, I see on the chat, you're special.
No favoritism here. Thank you for that feedback. You've actually reminded me, and I'm actually wondering if you read the same article a couple of years ago. I think it must have been in 2015. There was something that did the rounds saying that it was titled "You're Not That Special." Is that perhaps, did you? That blew my mind, and what a wonderful piece to read.
So I didn't, and there's this thinking out there, and one of the problems is everyone gets a silver star for turning up nowadays. And the argument is that kids need to be encouraged, but then what happens is they lose the value of meritocracy. And in almost every other country in the world, meritocracy is one of the biggest values that countries espouse, to say the best will win. You just have to choose what you're going to be the best at. And I think we do our children a disservice by saying that. And I didn't specifically read that article, but I do tell my children, guys, you're very special at what you want to be because you'll work hard, but nothing else makes you special. Right? You are exactly the same as every other kid turning up to your class every day. What's worse is you're shorter because you've got my genes. So now you have to work twice as hard.
No, I think that's wonderful. Might sound strange to some, but I think it's such a valuable lesson to teach your children. I see we've got one last question from Christian Fay. If you can please go ahead and ask your question, also address it to the speaker from whom you'd like an answer.
Yes, so can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
You can.
So the second last question was from me regarding wider family responsibilities. So I'm based in Germany nowadays, but I have been working and living in South Africa some years ago. And during normal times, I would be in Cape Town now for the Cape Town cycle tour, but it's not taking place now. So I'm missing out. So where I'm come from with my question is, with the social responsibility towards your parents, grandparents, whatever. So I was somehow missing out while I was away. I was away on another occasion also in Southeast Asia. And there was always the fear, despite all the technical means in place, internet, phone and whatever, that my responsibility towards my parents would come short in that respect. So maybe it's a different family setting, and my in-laws now live just across the street. So I feel also somehow responsible for them and not go away even if I would like to. Maybe you can elaborate a bit on that. What your thoughts are on this?
Who's that to? Is that to Eleni?
No, to you.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize it was to me.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, because you relocated from the UK to South Africa and stayed there.
Yeah, indeed. And it's interesting. We talk about prejudices. I hear the German accent before you mentioned you were German, and I just think efficiency, right? I'd see that on the CV and I'd think, oh, that's somebody I want to interview because of the cultural nuances that you would have, and shows so much bias, positive and negative. In this case, it was positive. So in the work-life balance stuff, it's actually a great question. I'm also situated where my mother is in the UK, 83 years old, incredibly at risk of COVID, can't get out of the house, and I can't get there. Right, because South Africans are pretty much barred from traveling everywhere now, and I feel exactly the same. And one of the things, very sadly, just very quickly, somebody else in the UK, 43-year-old lady, died of cancer that I work with, and her last words were, "I regret putting stuff off." And so, kind of my motto now is that I'm actually going to go ahead and do a lot more and get out and do more holidays and the like. And in those contexts, I think when you've moved abroad or you live so far away, the answer is just to try and get home as often as you can. But of course, Skype and it's no longer Skype, Teams, calls and the like. I had to buy my mum some new technology so that she was able to do that. And that's it. But I mean, moving away to another country obviously has very physical distances in that respect. So I'm not sure I can give great advice on that, but I certainly sympathize with the distance away from family, especially at this time. It must be hard.
Thanks. Maybe just a funny closing note. So someone from the UK told me that I learned my English in South Africa because of my English accent.
As long as you didn't learn your rugby in South Africa, that's fine. So that's a separate debate.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. Thank you for taking those questions. We've had some lovely questions. Thank you to all the attendees that have raised their hands and been brave enough to ask your questions to the speakers. We are going to start wrapping up though. So if I may, I just want to conclude with those other 2-3 points that I found so pertinent across all three speakers. So the first one that I'd said is about the failure that all three speakers had experienced, and that failure isn't a bad thing. The other few points was in each of the speeches or presentations that were shared, every single speaker spoke about taking ownership and writing your own story. I hope that that particular note sticks with every single one of you. And whatever that story is, just believe in your story and just take the action that needs to follow. And in support of taking action while writing your own story, it's about finding a trusted and appropriate mentor, sponsor, or coach, like Brett mentioned. And the final thing is, if I can read my own handwriting, is to take ownership. And that goes with writing your own story. So in and amongst all the various key golden amazing nuggets that the three speakers, Phil, Asha and Brett, shared with us today, thank you so much for your time. I definitely feel enlightened and inspired by each of your stories. You each had a different perspective to share, although there were some common themes, which is beautiful, how everyone can express themselves so differently. And I think that's something for each of us to take, that the paths aren't the same. It is your own story, but lean on those around you. And that's why IRMSA is around to help guide you on your professional journey. And that's also why the Student Forum is also around to help those that are still figuring things out. Lean on us, let us help support you in your journey towards professionalization. So yes, I'd just like to thank each and every single one of you. Thank you for your time. Thank you to IRMSA for helping facilitate and set up this session. This is the first session of 2021. There are more to follow, so we look forward to seeing you in our next sessions. For those of you who have not registered as student members, please do go have a look on the IRMSA website and just go through to the Student Forum webpage and register there. Like I said, there are many benefits to being a student member, so please, you'd be doing yourself a disservice by not participating in that. If you've got any questions, please address them to IRMSA, and as need be, they'll direct to the committee, etc. But thank you to everyone for your time. Special thanks to the speakers and to Jill for opening early on. And I do wish you a wonderful day ahead, and we look forward to seeing you in our next session on behalf of myself and the Student Forum Committee. Thank you and have a lovely day.
Thank you very much.